1st, 2012, Bobby was shot in the head by his live-in girlfriend and mother to his children, Adeline Isaacson. On that day, they went to a New Year's Eve party, and several people saw them arguing. They were drinking and doing drugs, and then they decided to go home. At one point, they know that at the party, Adeline slapped him across the face, which people also saw. When they got home, they continued to argue and fuss, and he had no weapon of any kind, but Adeline did. She had a pistol in her waistband, and she pulled it out and shot him in the head. They did not give her a drug test of any kind, and an Orange County officer told the mother of Bobby that it would have been better if she had drugs on her person, because it's not illegal to have them in your system, only on your person. Or if she shot him by accident, then it would have been wrongful death, and then she would have gotten drug tested. Or if they had been getting along and she crashed the car, then she would have automatically been arrested for manslaughter and drug tested. The only thing that they noticed was that Bobby had a prior arrest for domestic battery against her. It didn't matter that the arrest was made when she came to where he was intoxicated and high on drugs and started hitting him with the baby in his arms, or that she ran him over with the car. Even the fact that there were people there that wrote statements of what really happened. Bobby, being the guy, went to jail, and Adeline, being the female, went home to sleep off her high. This is just one example of domestic violence against men. Not all of them end in death, but many end in the man losing custody of his children, getting arrested, or in the good cases, finding help. Domestic violence is on the rise. 1 in 4 adult males will experience domestic abuse. In my speech, I'll be discussing the statistics of domestic violence against males, why male victims often don't come forward, and what to do, or giving some advice on what to do if you or someone you know is the victim of domestic violence. As I said before, every 1 in 4 men will experience a form of domestic violence each year. That's upwards of 3 million male domestic violence victims each year, or 1 man in America abused every 37.8 seconds. Domestic violence against men can take place in many forms, including emotional, sexual, physical, and threats of abuse. It can happen in heterosexual or same-sex relationships. Even though all of this information makes it seem like there's no help for men, there is. Some ways for help are create a safety plan, pack an emergency bag that includes items you'll need when you leave, such as extra clothes and keys. Leave the bag in a safe place. Keep important personal papers, money, and medication handy so that you can take them with you on short notice. Know exactly where you're going and how you'll get there. Where you can seek help. In an emergency, call 911. If you need help planning, ask someone you can trust. You can turn to a friend, a coworker, a neighbor, a relative, anyone you can trust. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is 800-799-SAFE. This hotline provides crisis intervention and referrals to hotlines. You can turn to your healthcare provider. Doctors and nurses will treat injuries and can refer you to other local resources. A counseling or mental health center can also help. Domestic abuse centers may be around you. You can go to www.domesticshelters.org to find one in your area. Although domestic violence shelters are changing their name and taking the word women out of it, unfortunately, women advocacy groups can have the tendency to make it seem like men aren't welcome. Now, with all these statistics, you may be wondering, why don't they just get help? The reasons for this is they have the fear of being seen as the abuser and not the victim. In many stories that I read, they were often seen as the abuser and arrested and taken to jail since the cops took the word of the women. They have a fear of losing their children or even their homes and personal items. Some other stories I read, they ended up in a divorce, and the woman got all of the property, and they also got custody of their children, which they kind of use as collateral, saying like you can't see them. They have the fear of being called weak for allowing themselves to get hit by a girl. A lot of times when these men come forward, they're called weak because they're supposed to have this sort of macho personality, and they're supposed to be able to take a punch. With all this information, it may be hard but not impossible to get help. Adeline Isaacson still has not been convicted to this day. With the numbers growing, more light needs to be shed on the subject of domestic violence against males. It happens to every 1 in 4 men, and there are very few shelters for battered men as compared to women's shelters. These men are perceived as weak if they speak up. It is up to us to change that stereotype. If you or someone you know is a victim of domestic violence, please speak up and get help.